All right, everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited we get to do something new here. We're doing Q&A episodes, but coaching in real life. And so I have someone who I absolutely adore and love and have gotten to spend so much intimate quality time with in the membership. Naomi, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share a little bit about our topic this week, which is boundaries and enforcing boundaries. So Naomi has a question and some real life experience that she's moving through that we all get to hear a little bit about and then receive support on as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, love. I'm nervous and excited to dive into this. My question is how to renew yourself after boundary fatigue. So sometimes there are people who really like to push or force or try to even break boundaries. I know boundaries are for me, but there are a lot of times not just with kids, but there are some people who seem really bent on convincing or coercing me to drop my boundaries. And there's a point where I've gotten really tired of it. I've kind of broken trust, or I've lost my trust in people over it. I've developed some pretty severe social anxiety over it. And I honestly started doubting my own boundaries with myself. I question the boundaries I set. I ignore my own boundaries because I feel like the message I receive is my boundaries aren't valuable and they're not worth it, or they're too much, or they're too extreme, or people just don't understand them. And so over time, I'm like, well, maybe they are, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this boundary is silly. Maybe it's too strict, or maybe I what if myself.
Yeah.
And there's the sense of sometimes telling myself, well, just keep trying doesn't feel really kind to myself. But at the same time, I don't want to just wallow and disappear and never socialize again. But recognizing I do really have some major wounds around this. I've had this issue with abusive caregivers. I'm one big experience for me has been in with the medical system when I've had to try to advocate for myself. When either doctors don't understand what's going on, when they give up trying, or we have communication issues, because sometimes a little I'm a little neurospicy, and sometimes when I'm trying to communicate, it feels like I'm talking a different language to someone else, or I struggle with social conventions. So there feels like there's a loss of communication, and then they don't believe me, and then I start to not believe me, and it's a whole mess. And I've really just lost total faith in the medical system, because I've been told, or for people, I've been told what I say is happening in my body doesn't matter. What I say I need from my body is silly, or I'm too sensitive, and I'm kind of overhearing it. And it's hard for me to really try to engage in new people when I find it, yeah. I'm starting to lose.
No, it's good.
Hold on.
I'm sure so many can relate.
But yeah, I think the words I start to tell myself is, no one will listen to me anyway. No one will hear me anyway. And I'm trying to figure out how do I find the value in myself again, find the worth in myself to hold boundaries, but also respect my capacity in the space I am of someone who has been wounded repeatedly by people who do not respect me. Because I'm finding myself in one extreme or another, either never speak to people again, or force myself to be in a situation where I end up overcompensating, fawning, not advocating for myself, and just dropping my boundaries completely. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, especially in the medical system, because I think so many women can relate to that. Just I've done so much work with others who have all these symptoms, they go in and they just feel so misunderstood, or even more confused than when they went in. I mean, I personally even had that experience. But I think what's coming through for me as you're sharing is this, like, not only pedestaling certain people, right? Like the medical system should know more than I know. And I think that that can be really dangerous for us in the sense that, we do begin to override our intuition or our innate knowing about what we're experiencing because someone has a title that we as a society have deemed as, like, above us. And so when I was hearing you share, the thing that kept coming through for me was, where are we taking these things personally? So if you were to share with, like, a doctor, for example, something that you're experiencing and they don't relate or they don't understand or they misinterpret what you're saying, where are we taking that personally of, like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, rather than, oh, this person doesn't get the language that I'm speaking. This isn't my person to continue to work with. Like, instead of it being needing to prove your worth to them or enforce the boundary with them, where can we take where they're meeting us at face value of, like, this person just isn't hearing what I'm saying, and that's okay. That just means this isn't my person. And can I then just trust that something more aligned or someone who does resonate is going to come along, or that I will find it? Instead of putting so much energy into trying to convince or show someone, it's just like, oh, this just doesn't seem aligned. And, like, it just doesn't take up as much energy, because you're talking about boundary fatigue. It's like when you're trying to get that person to understand you, when they obviously they're either benefiting from not understanding you, or they're just not in a place to understand you, and that doesn't actually mean anything about you, though, right? And I think the thing is, we think that it does mean something about us. So, and that, doesn't just go for, like, doctors or the medical field, right? It can go towards people who, like you were speaking about, people who you have relationships with that maybe weren't healthy or weren't safe, they might benefit from continuing to override your boundaries or try to coerce you into changing your boundaries, instead of making that mean something about you and your boundaries. Like you had said, either not be good enough or not be listened to. Can it just be like, oh, this is where this person is at today, and what boundary do I need to enforce to preserve my energy? And can I not make that mean anything about me or them? Just like, oh, this is where this is at right now.
How do you cultivate that trust?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when you're hearing, like, I think for me, in regards to the medical field, like, let's say, when over and over again you get people, and this person's not hearing you, this person's not hearing you, and then this person's not hearing you, and it takes, and meeting with new people takes time, money, energy, and sometimes it can feel like, and I know this can happen sometimes for people in the dating field too, like, and with friendships. I know for me, trying to make friends as an adult, because I don't have, like, any built-in structures, like, there's it feels kind of like, what's the word? Like something that takes a long time. Why can't I think of it? Not, trial by fire is not the right thing.
I mean, it can be kind of, like,
Yeah.
daunting, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, here we go again. Like, oh, another person who's not aligned, or, oh, another person who doesn't get me.
Mhm.
But where is that thinking actually perpetuating the story of, like, things are hard or things don't, like, you know, things don't work out for you or you are not worthy? Like, what if it's like, oh, this is a step closer? Like, to me, it's like a perspective shift. When we see it as like, this is daunting and this takes more time, like I have been trying to use some of those like more difficult things that I'm experiencing as tools for me to get more clear on what it is that I want. And not only just focusing on like, oh, this is so not what I want. It's like, what do I want instead? Like, can I use this as a tool to get clear? Like, I want a friendship that feels like this because it's the opposite of what I felt in this connection. Like, can we use them as tools and supports rather than like something that we wasted, quote unquote, our time on?
That's what I was popping in my head instead of
Yeah.
thinking of a wasted time.
Yeah.
Just like a narrowing it down. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because when we think we're wasting our time, this happens in dating too, right? Like, oh, I spent so many years with this person. Like, if it doesn't work out, then it's all this wasted time. And you can by all means live by that narrative. But I think about how I feel in that narrative, and it's like, well, then I feel like, you know, not empowered. I feel like used. I feel like, you know, in that like lack, in that scarcity of, oh, well, I messed up, instead of like, oh, okay, well, this didn't work out. However, like, what did I learn? Like, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about relationships, friendships, whatever the situation is. Because everything has a teaching. I think how we learn to build trust with ourselves is through knowing that everything is supporting us if we choose to see that, even the really shit stuff.
Is that how you're able to kind of not take things personally? Because I know I hear that a lot is like, oh, don't take it personally. But I know I'm a very sensitive person and sometimes I really do. And someone when tells me, don't take it personally, like, what do you mean, don't take it personally? How can I not? Or like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You're like, this is a very personal thing. Like,
yeah.
yeah. I have an experience that I've been moving through for a few years now with a particular person who, continues to reach out to me in their own ways. That is like, just like involves a legal system, and it's very, very, feels very attacking and it feels very personal. So every time it comes up, of course, that part of me that takes it personally is lit up. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why does this person keep doing this? It feels like a punishment almost, right? Like, why am I being punished for this? For something I didn't do, like, especially it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, it's that protector in us wants to come forth and, guns a-blazing and just be like, I'm just gonna burn this all to the ground. But I've noticed that for me, it's allowing space for that part to come up, right? The part of me that feels like it's being punished, the part of me that feels like it's being done to me, the part of me that feels like I have to defend myself. And then after meeting it, by just allowing it space to be heard, say all the things it needs to say, right? Because it's usually got a lot of anger, frustration, sadness, and I just let it be as messy as possible, whether that's literally saying it out loud to myself or writing it down, whatever I feel called to do in the moment. Um, and then reminding myself that there's something here for me. I access where it lives in my body. I ask it what it needs. And it's usually something like it needs compassion, right? It's cultivating that compassion for myself, for the parts of me that are angry, for the parts of me who feel like I'm being punished. Um, Forgiveness for the parts of me that are feeling sadness or frustration, like, oh, I don't want to be mad at anyone. Well, no, but I am mad. So can I forgive myself for being mad? Because it's okay that I'm mad. It's okay that I'm frustrated. It's okay that I'm angry. It's making sure not to override those feelings, but then also getting curious of like, where is this inviting me to expand even more into love, even more into compassion, even more into grace, not only for myself, but for that person as well. And that doesn't mean I'm having a conversation with that person, because I'm certainly not, like I'm not having conversations with that person. But in my own body and my own experience, I am forgiving myself. I am forgiving that person because that sets me free. That's liberating. When I harbor that resentment or that anger, that is where the fatigue comes in.
Oh, that makes sense. When you're holding on to it, like the energy's got to go into that, holding that grip.
Mm-hmm. Imagine it like boulders in your pack that are just not yours. When you're holding on to that anger or whatever those stories are, that frustration, like you're carrying somebody else's boulders, you're carrying somebody else's shit. That's going to make you way more tired than saying, okay, I see you trying to put your stuff on me. I forgive you because, you don't know that you're trying to offload it, but I'm also not going to take it. So it's just like placing it at their feet. And that placing it at their feet is that forgiveness and compassion, but that is enforcing the boundary of saying, I'm actually not going to carry this. I'm not going to carry the anger. I'm not going to carry the frustration. I felt it. I allowed myself to feel it, but I also know that this isn't my burden to hold. When doctors or people or your partner like are placing those judgments or those stories of not understanding you, like that's just their stuff. You don't have anything to prove to them. I know it might feel like you do in those moments, but it's remembering that that's not yours to prove to anyone. It's proving that for yourself.
That makes sense of like where the renewal comes from when you let go of what and you give it back to them, so you're not carrying it. And then in those opportunities of where you find parts of yourself having a hard time, you like meeting yourself. So if trust is burned, you're building trust within yourself with yourself by showing that I can hold myself here. Building up self-love by when you need to let it all out, loving yourself there as you are. And building compassion for yourself by offering compassion in those moments.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that, yeah, you put it beautifully. Oh my gosh, I love that. Your little recap. And knowing that can happen multiple times in one day with different people, and I think we have it in our head of like, oh no, I put it down and I just don't ever experience it again. But like, we're here to feel. We're here to have relationships. We're here for upheaval. And that's going to happen multiple times in a day. It can happen multiple times in one conversation. I was just on the phone with my great grandma the other day for like an hour and a half. And it was a series of highs and lows, a series of enforcing boundaries and then conversing again and enforcing a boundary and conversing again, and, so all that to say, like, it can happen multiple times in an hour and a half even, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say some days I feel like maybe I'm just weightlifting. I'm just gonna get stronger. Okay, I can put this down. But wait, I'm not done with it. Okay, maybe I can put it down. But
yeah, it's a dance. It's a dance. And that's okay, like doing the dance or not doing the dance. It doesn't mean that like you're doing it right or wrong, because it's also going to depend on your nervous system that day. Had I been dysregulated when I had that conversation with my grandma, who knows how enforcing my boundaries would have been? It probably wouldn't have happened. I probably would have just projected my own wounds continuously onto her, because that's the state of mind I would have been in. And that's where my body would have physically been at. I felt even in that conversation, my nervous system dysregulate, because I somatically know what it feels like when my body is dysregulated. I get very hot. Like I get like that anger builds up in my entire body and I feel like I'm on fire, you know? And so it's communicating to her in that moment too. My whole body is lit up. I am so hot. Like when I hear that, I feel so like intense anger. Like I need for this subject to be changed. Like I need us to talk about something else. And, you're talking about enforcing boundaries and people trying like to coerce you into, changing your boundaries. We're talking about my great grandma who's 90 years old. She doesn't hear my boundary. She doesn't hear I'm fiery red hot and about to explode at the top of my head. She continues. She continues on like I hadn't said anything, which is part of the reason why I'm angry, right? um, so it's just like, it's taking that. And instead of seeing it as, oh, they're trying to coerce me into changing my boundaries, it's just, oh, this person is also showing me where they are at. Like not seeing it as like an attack on you or trying to manipulate you. Cause so much of what people do is unconscious anyways. Right.
Mm.
So instead of seeing it like, not seeing it as an attack on you, and this is really important with children too. Parents are like, they know exactly what they're doing, they're, they've learned how to, manipulate me into getting exactly what they want. And it's just like, yeah, but how do we benefit from thinking like that? We just don't. Then we become victims of small children. So instead just being like, oh, this is where this person is at right now. They are showing me that they cannot hear me. They can't hear me at all. So what do I need to do? To hear myself.
Yeah. I know I've had a fun relationship with blame because blame lets
Mhm.
me not be responsible. And
Mhm.
that's something I know I definitely have to work on all the time because I want to blame so bad
Mhm.
everything because it's like it's tiring. You need to have to do more for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely, especially with the kids thing, like I know even today I was like, I said no. And I said no like 3 times and still running over and doing like looks at me, runs over, does the exact thing I said no to. It's like, okay, I can be angry with 4-year-old who has just started to develop impulse control, or I can walk over and be like, let's have a conversation about what no means
Mhm.
and like practice focusing on building that skill. I
Mhm.
luckily have a little more patience now for boundaries with my kiddos. Otherwise, yeah, the fatigue it's real there too because that's all they do is push the boundaries because that's how they know where they are, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, boundaries with kiddos is that's like a whole thing in and of itself that we need a textbook for, a very big one. And you know, with blame, something that I feel has been so helpful in my life, and I know you've heard me say it in the membership probably a dozen times too, is like, instead of going into blaming, can we start getting curious? Like, can we actually start asking more questions? So when you say no for the fourth time, it's like, okay, instead of being like, this person, is not respecting my no, can it be like, I wonder why this no isn't being heard? And like, I think that adults think that we can't have this type of conversation with a small child, but you absolutely can. Just like sitting down with them and being like, here's what I've noticed. I've noticed you have put the Legos in your nose. And I said no. And then I noticed you put the Legos in your nose. And I said no. And then I noticed you put the Legos in your nose. Like, can you tell me more about that? Because then it's like you're reminding them this process that you've taken them through, and they get to reflect then. And you're not judging them and you're not shaming them, but you're like, let's have a conversation about this. Um, because maybe it's like, I have an itch in my nose and this is reaching the itch. And then you're like, oh, let me show you how you can reach an itch in your nose without using Legos. Like we don't know how much we miss by like, I hope you guys like that example. I've seen a lot in my day and age of being a teacher and nanny and all the things. But we miss a lot by not being curious.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know there's, for me, sometimes even like I'll be doing something I don't even know. And that curiosity helps me because it's a gentle pattern interruption. Like, wait, I was doing what? Oh, okay. Thank you for showing me that because I didn't even know.
Yeah. Just like, I noticed you're doing this. I noticed you did this. Can you tell me more about that? Changes everything.
Yeah. That feels really good to hear. And that's showing me like how I need that too.
Yeah. Back to like, your questions, like, can you use that curiosity to support you? And how do I find value and worth in myself? Can you get curious with that? Where have you been told that you don't have value? Where have you been told that you don't have worth? And can you bring this curiosity to that part of you and ask it, you're carrying this burden. Do you want to keep carrying it, or do you want to do something else?
I can very strongly, it seems like a little kid version of me, just like at first being really angry and then kind of melting with the equivalent of like, no, I don't want to keep carrying it. It's heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy. Yeah. What do you want that part of you to know?
You don't have to keep carrying it, honey. It's okay. You can put it back. You can give it back. But they threw it at me. That wasn't okay. It's like, yeah, it really wasn't okay. But we can give it now. Okay. I love working with my inner child. She's so cute. She's spun too. I have to gently remind her not to throw it back, so we can hand it back gently. But that's okay. We can work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for those of you who are listening who haven't done inner child work, like I love watching you do inner child work, like Naomi. Like I just love how attentive you are. And this is something that I've gotten the privilege to watch you do so many times in our calls. The reason why it's important to have these conversations with these parts of us is because then we start learning their language. Then we start learning what they sound like, what they feel like. Like you just identified that there's this anger, right? Through that identifying, you then get to come in as that parent and see that anger and be like, how do you want to express that in a way that is actually appropriate for them, where they're not throwing the rock, which is, maybe projections in your adult life, because that's how it's going to show up. Your inner child's anger left unchecked and like unresolved, they'll continue to throw that boulder, that rock at whoever stands in their way when they're activated. So actually identifying the anger and seeing that it exists there, now you get to say, all right, how do we want to express this anger in a way that is safe for both of us, that then keeps the people in our lives and the people around us safe as well, because I will not be acting from projections.
Right. Hitting and yelling in a pillow is a personal fan favorite.
Yeah.
But we're trying to expand our repertoire. So I'm definitely up for more options to be shared. I'm sure other people would as well. Because anger is a tricky one. Feel like safe to release.
Yeah. Something that I've done in the past is like, and did with the children when I had a classroom, when I had my own, in-home, was that we wrote or drew why we were angry, and so for children that looked like scribbles. Like for me, I usually journaled, like, and it was messy. Like I used no, like, non-violent communicative language. I was just like, this is not okay. And, just went full rage mode. and then burned it, like to fully just release it. It's like, get it out, move it through our vessels, whether that's through, I also do like screaming. Like I have like a sacred rage playlist that has 2 songs on it. And I listen to those 2 songs back to back and just like scream it. Um, I know another member in Codependency Alchemy has shared that like it's in the car for her. Like she will go get in the car and drive and just scream and yell and rage in her car. Probably, maybe not on like a freeway or anything, like maybe find a nice quiet back road. Everyone needs to stay safe first and foremost. But yeah, like let's all start collectively sharing some ways that we can move through rage or anger. When I think of those emotions, I think of fire and water. Like I think of this part of the ocean I went to on the Big Island that's like very intense. It is, rageful, but it is water as well. Like can we find other ways to use the elements to express our emotions?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is really important conversation to be had, because I know for me, a lot of my like physical manifestations of disease were showing up when I was holding in that anger. Like I actually had like went into my first like remission after I had this very large anger purge in
Mhm.
a group with like built up anger I had towards my abuser, and like literally the next day no new pain. Like it's really astounding like how the pain kept in your body, like holding on to all that, like really can affect your like well-being on like every level.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it is powerful on, not just an emotional level, but a physical level, especially people who are experiencing any sort of like disharmony or dis-ease in their bodies. Um, Also feeling called to share, if you're looking to like ways to express your anger, the best person to ask is the part of you that's angry. So like literally ask that part of you, whether maybe it's your inner teen, maybe it's present day you, maybe it is your inner child, but just ask them, how do you desire to express this anger, or how do you desire to express this rage? Because they will show you, whether it's you hear the answer or you see the answer, and maybe it doesn't come in right away, but if you keep asking, it will be shown to you.
Right. Because sometimes you can look down a list of suggestions and they're all great, but until like they might not any of them feel like the right one. Because what you mean might need some like dancing like crazy or running down the beach for an hour. Like
Yeah,
it can be something not that you would typically think of. So
exactly. And that's the empowerment that I hope to continue to cultivate in everyone, is that like no one can know what you need more than you. And so reflecting back on, how can I meet that part of you? And, to wrap it up, going back to your question, like, how do I find that value and worth in myself? Like, can you take a moment to be with this part of you that you just uncovered? Understand that there's some anger there. Let her have some space to express that anger, and then ask how she can be shown that she is of value, that she is of worth. What does she need from you?
that phrase right there, no one can know what I need more than me, I feel like just is exactly what I needed to hear and all that. Because even like it to me feels so validating, even like after like it feels like it's helping me to actually put that down, like even going back to the medical system of telling me you don't know what you need, you don't know what you're talking about. Like
Mhm.
hearing that, like only you know what really truly know what you need, just feels like permission to set it down,
Yeah.
permission to let go and to be free, and to walk away and be like, I can find what I need. It's because it's going to be there for me. That feels like I don't have the burden blocking my trust from flowing.
Mhm.
So now I need to like paint that on my walls somewhere so I can
Yes.
spend time.
Yes, make it the background on your phone so you see it many times throughout the day.
Say it again.
There is no one out there that can possibly know what you need more than you do. There's no one that could heal you more than you can heal yourself. Because no one has experienced what you've experienced. No one knows the intricacies of the life that you've lived. So it's impossible for someone else to tell you what you need. Someone else can guide you there, like sometimes I'm a guide, but I am not telling you. I could never tell you. I could tell you what I think, but I haven't lived your life. I haven't lived your experience. I don't know how that part of you needs to be seen, but you do. And so all you have to do is ask. It's important to remember when you ask the first time, some of these parts, many of you listening to this episode, you might not have ever talked to your inner child. You may have never accessed these parts of you. And when you do this the first time, you might hear nothing. I heard nothing. I heard a big, like, fuck you, I'm not talking to you for a while. But it was me continuously going back because we have to build trust with these parts of us. These parts of us are usually protecting us. They're hardened, rightfully so, as a way to keep them safe. So going back and continuing to go back with curiosity and compassion helps soften them so they begin to have these conversations with us. So know that sometimes it might take time, sometimes it might not. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
Some might take longer than others. But I know you can speak to, once you start meeting one part, they all start they start coming out the woodwork. You're like, oh, whoa, I've got a lot of parts here.
I've got a baby and a 4-year-old and a teenager, and you all need me at the same time. You get the real full parenting experience in that self-parenting.
But I will speak for myself in my journey with meeting these aspects of myself. And I actually just even met, the teenage part of me when I was on the Big Island recently. And I haven't felt like I've really needed to do too much of this, inner child work lately. But after years, years of doing it consistently, and still this teenage part of me was really holding on to something so deep. And I was like, whoa, it was proof that it doesn't necessarily go away, but it does continue to further liberate us every time we explore it.
Yeah. And to me, it also shows us that we deserve the patience and the time needed. Because so often there's this pressure to, why aren't you over it already? Right. Like people say, just get over it. And it's like, I really want to, and I know my own life dismantle that, because I deserve time. I deserve patience, and to not be forced to try to force myself beyond something I'm not ready for. And I think that's something really empowering to hold on to, is that you don't have to be on anyone else's timeline,
I love that, Naomi. That is your answer. When you're getting that boundary fatigue, you remember that. Like, play this back and listen to that. Like, you get to be patient. You don't have to be on anyone's timeline. So when a doctor doesn't understand, that's the medicine that you tell yourself, instead of going into the fatigue of like, okay, now I have to carry this as well. No, I don't have to carry this. And like, I know I get to be patient and I get to do this on my own timeline. There's your medicine.
We found it.
Yes, you found it, right? Perfect example of like, I could never have said that the way that you said that. I could never have presented it. And also, it's more powerful when it just comes from you, right? Like, that wisdom is inside of you.
And there's something so wonderful and so powerful to have someone who sees you walking with you and holding your hand
Mhm.
while you get it. It's not like you're making my legs move, but you're like, what, like you're there with me and guiding me and supporting me. And that I think is also my medicine too, for like when I try to want to do everything by myself, because I think it's easier by myself because no one gets me. When you
Yeah.
have someone who does and they can help like just be there while you're walking to where you need to go, that is also big medicine in its own way. I
Yeah.
love you.
I love you too. I love you too. It's so important to remember we don't have to do this alone, right? It doesn't mean have other people do it for you, but it means can I sit in a room and be held as I navigate this? And it's been an honor to be able to sit in a room with you for so long and have your wisdom and medicine be shared with a group. It is truly an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tears are not wrong. Tears are not wrong. Tears
Uh,
are not wrong.
tears are beautiful. I welcome them. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this first Q&A episode. I am already lit up. I don't know how I'm ever going to go back to like not doing episodes like this. This is so fun. So thank you for allowing people to see you and bringing this conversation here and being vulnerable enough to share. I really appreciate your courage and willingness to do this with me.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being such a wonderful mirror and reflecting to me. Thank you for loving me and seeing me. And thank you to everyone listening for hearing me. That is truly a precious gift. And thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I love you so much.
I love you so much.
All right, babes, until next time.